That's great. Right. So normally we kick off this conference with a keynote, but this year we decided we'd do it a wee bit differently, and we're going to have a keynote panel. So at a very, very considerable expense, we've brought from the four corners of the country and abroad a number of people that we think will set the tone. Now, I was going to do the usual Connor thing and talk about, let's start a fire and stuff, but I decided that's probably not the thing to do. We have a couple of fire starters on the panel anyway, so I'm going to leave it to them. Can I ask the panel just to join me at this stage, please? And we're going to kind of then run for the next 45-ish minutes or so for the first part of the session. So those who are among the chosen, can you come forward and grab a seat? You're on the end because you have the extra mic, if you don't mind. Thanks. Now, the deal basically is that for very incredible amounts of money, they're going to deal with a series of pretty, I won't say hard, but pretty challenging questions. And we'll start by asking each member of the panel to very briefly introduce themselves. Now, we have a portable mic somewhere there, Seamus. Yeah. So you can start because you have it in your hand. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Are we okay for sound, guys? Do you want to? Is there anything we need to check or whatever? Deirdre's going to be coming in second. She's behind you. Okay, thanks, Deirdre. Lovely to see you. Right. So we might start on the far side and kind of work back. So, Seamus, if you have your own mic, so you can. Yep. I think we're turned on. Who are you, and who, if anything, or what, if anything, do you represent? Tell us.
So, thank you. So my name is Saoirse Exton. I'm 16 years old, and I'm a student from Aqua, Washington Lee in Limerick City. And basically, my whole thing, I suppose, is climate change. So about over 3 years ago now, I started a group called Fridays Future Limerick, which basically is a climate striking group. So every Friday I would go out in front of local government buildings and protest for climate justice. And over time that kind of developed. So our kind of biggest point was September 20th, 2019. We had 1,000 people in Limerick coming together to protest for climate justice. And yeah, so it's just been a really wild ride. More recently I've gotten involved with student politics at a second level. I was elected Equality Officer for 2020 and 2021, so I was elected twice. And that has kind of given me perspective in terms of the more legislative side of activism, as well as the student perspective and the general kind of equality, climate justice perspective. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's certainly filled your minute. Thank you, Saoirse. Right. We'll go to Seamus next.
Great. So Seamus Hoyne is my name. I'm the Dean of Flexible and Work-Based Learning here in Toulouse. I'm also head of the Thurles campus, and I'm Principal Investigator for the Sustainable Development Research Institute in Toulouse. So multiple different roles. To be back to be 16 again and to have the climate activism energy, but I suppose I've been working in the sustainability space for over 25 years. I've run consultancy companies, I've worked all across Europe, I lead research projects, but in I suppose from an academic perspective, I suppose the seeds that I planted with Pam and Bernie about the theme today was certainly the crossover that's now happening in terms of sustainability, the broad sustainability agenda, and the use of technology as a real enabler to address the challenges that we have. So for the Thurles campus, we've gone through a strategic planning process, and sustainable development goals are at the heart of everything we're trying to do on this campus. So whether it's our education agenda, our campus as a green campus, we have a green flag outside, our program development, our engagement with stakeholders. So I suppose I'm the annoying noise in the side of the president, the vice presidents, all the other deans, the heads of department, trying to integrate sustainability into everything we do.
Brilliant. Thank you, Seamus. Can we go to Deirdre next? Deirdre, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you great. Can you hear me, Connor?
Thanks. Okay, can you do your little party piece, who you are and why you're here, and we'll move on.
So
Thanks.
Sure, Connor. Good morning, everybody from Brussels. Hearing like the buzz in the room, I was really wishing I was here with you all. So I'm hearing a bit of an echo there.
We have a little bit of echo. They're working on it at the moment. I think we need to kill a few mics here, Deirdre. Just give us a second.
Sure.
Should be okay now.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Deirdre Hodson. I'm here in Brussels. Lovely sunny morning here in Brussels. Wish I was with you there. So thanks so much for the invite. I'm working at the European Commission. I'm in the Education Department of the European Commission. And I have been working for the past number of years on technology in education. So looking at all things digital skills development, teacher digital skills as well. I've been working on a couple of tools, self-reflection tools to help teachers and schools see what they're at in terms of digital planning, the selfie tools. But more recently, I've actually been working on sustainability in education. So we have a new policy that we've been working on at European level, and that's to help countries work better together to embed sustainability in education, just as Seamus has been talking about there. So I've been working on the team, building a new policy. We've a new recommendation that's going to be released that will be adopted by all the EU countries next month. We have a new EU working group on sustainability in education, a new competence framework on sustainability. So that's something that's, it's fairly new, that kind of policy cooperation at European level. So happy to share some of the work that we're doing there, Connor, on that.
That's brilliant, Deirdre. Thank you so much. Yeah, and again, it's nice to see this sort of activity taking place at the Commission level. It sort of complements what's going on in other places and other spaces. Is that me? Okay, right. I've been told to keep working away. There's a little bit of echo, but we'll keep going. So thanks for that. We're moving swiftly on. I'm delighted to kind of welcome the final two members of the panel. So, Aoife, do you want to tell us who you are and why you're here?
My name is Aoife Foley, and I'm a teacher from Davis College, Mallow. I'm a language teacher. I'm delighted to be here as well. I don't have a huge background in sustainability or technology, but I'm a very active member in my school and local community. So I would have been big into sports, but I still am. The last few years I've taken part in a lot of projects with my students. So I think I went from the Taekwondo teacher to the Green Schools teacher, the Eco UNESCO teacher. So the projects that we've worked on would be the young reducers. So instead of the young offenders, one of the stars from the young offenders helped us out a little bit to give us a bit of publicity. So we took a big campaign to try and reduce plastic in our school and local community. Rebel Green was a project that we really needed technology because it took place during lockdown. So we were interviewing local businesses that were eco-friendly, our local groups such as our local tidy towns. And our current project, which caught Connor's eye, it's a bit of a different project, is a sustainable life with my canine friend. So I think we're always thinking about what we can do to be sustainable. But in Ireland, there's a huge amount of dog owners, and especially since lockdown, there's a huge increase. And unfortunately, a lot of people are also giving dogs back to shelters. So with this project, the students were looking at so many areas, adopting, neutering, picking up after your dog, so the problem of dog fouling, and I suppose environmentally friendly products for your dogs. So that's our current project, and delighted to be here.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm delighted to have you. And as you say, it was that project that caught my attention because the little videos. There were these wonderful little videos. But we'll talk about that further along. Introductions. Last but by no means least, Declan.
Thanks, Connor. So my name is Declan Coulter. I am the School Supports Coordinator with Laois Offaly ETB. So we have 9 post-primary schools in Laois Offaly, so over 4,500 students, 450 teachers. So I'm on secondment from Portlaoise College, where I'm a guidance counsellor and teacher business studies, former advisor with the PDST, and I'm now seconded from the school to support our 9 schools in different initiatives and projects that are happening. and there's a particular focus on digital technology. So I suppose we do a bit of work with UCD. I'm a PhD candidate in UCD myself, where I'm looking at the digital divide and its the effect of that on student engagement. And I suppose our slant, I suppose, from the ETB perspective, when we're talking about sustainability, is there's been and ICT. There's been so much investment in ICT. How can you sustain that investment, and how can you make the impact? So it's a slightly different look on the sustainability aspect, but that's hence why Conor gave me the call. I was cutting the grass yesterday evening. I got a phone call from Conor. I won't mention cutting the grass again, Conor.
That's okay. It's going to. Yeah.
Just say to the speakers, can you hold the mic and point it at their face, because we're having to push the volume up too high and that's giving the feedback.
So basically,
if it's not pointing directly at their face, it's not picking you up. We're having to have this exercise.
First time a teacher has been told to speak up.
speak up.
Well,
Brilliant.
Point the mic at your face, so it's pointing straight at you.
We're good. We're good. Okay, folks. So thanks all, and thanks, Deirdre, for joining us. The plan basically is to have a single kind of starter question. I've given each person 3 minutes to speak to a particular question. They're going to give us their own take on that question, and then we will work from that to more general questions, then we'll open out the floor. That's the general plan for the next 40 minutes or so. Okay, so if that works for you, unless anyone wants any of them to leave or something like that, I can throw them out now. No, we good. Can we start again at the far end? So the general question really that we're starting is, okay, this is a little bit of a step to one side for the conference. Normally it's just ICT, very, very strongly focused on ICT and teaching and learning and so on, with the strong technology connection. But there's a wee bit of extra in the mix this time, Pam, I think it's fair to say. So the title of the conference is Sustaining Education. Now my question to each of you on the panel is, what does that actual title, Sustaining Education, what does it bring to mind when you hear it? And we'll start again at the far end and maybe work along. Saoirse, it's all yours. And I remember now I'm watching, I have a camel here that I'll throw after 4 minutes or so. Go on.
Yeah, so I suppose it's probably obvious why I think of when I hear sustaining education, because of my background. But I think one of the massive issues, one of the causes of climate change, of the climate crisis, is a lack of education in general. Things surrounding, sustainability and justice and colonization and all of these different things. And so in order to really fight against the climate crisis in a meaningful way, we need to re-educate ourselves in every meaning of the word. We need to, teach ourselves about the historical context between why we are the way we are today socially and economically. We also need to have a look at things like technology, which are vastly important in creating solutions for a world that will be entirely sustainable. I just think it's really important. The education is the key to everything, really. I think it's the catalyst, and it holds an immense amount of power that often is untapped, both at all levels of education. It is a resource that can be used for change. I'm sorry that wasn't quite 3 minutes, but I mean that's exactly.
That's grand. Yeah. And why do you think we should talk about it today?
Because I think we just should talk about it in every single space, to be honest.
That's a very fair answer. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Seamus, can we move to you then, please?
Yeah. I'll start with. I was actually at a 50th birthday party last night for one of my friends from college. So we still have a gang of about 30 of us that still hang around together. And I met people that I hadn't met for 10 years. And one of the guys nicknamed Spud.
Murphy, probably not. Yeah.
We hadn't met in 7 or 8 years. He did a degree in IT, and we were saying, what are you doing now? So he's working with the Dublin City Councils, looking at big data, but specifically on sustainability agenda. He said, when I knew you in college, you were this unusual guy that was into renewable energy. I was the only person in my class in mechanical engineering, did my 3rd year and final year project in the energy space, and I've been in that space ever since. So our words have collided utterly, and I think exactly what to Wisha was saying, sustainability is now mainstream. ICT and education is mainstream.
Yeah.
And without them working together, we're going to fail utterly on both sides. Because when we look at research that's happening in the ICT space, we're all talking about green computing, energy, environmental impact of computing. We know the debates around data centers in Ireland, etc. When we talk about sustainability, we're talking about the use of big data. We're talking about smart systems to make these buildings, to make our lives, to make the electric car that I drove to the college in today work better. So I often have debates and get to speak at policy agenda meetings with ministers and in the commission, and people talk about the green economy and green education and green ICT. It's not the green economy, it's the economy. It's not green education, it's education. And sustainability has to be, we have to green every part of our current economy, not create this picture of this beautiful nirvana of a green economy where we walk through a door of a cupboard and end up in this beautiful magical world. That's not the way it works. We've got to change and transform everything that we're doing in terms of education.
Yeah.
And sustainability is at the heart of that. And I think also the theme came out of the discussions with Pam and Bernie about students and educators have come through a really, really challenging time in the last 2.5 years. It's really been challenging for everybody. But we've learned a huge amount of new ways of engaging and supporting students, and for lecturers and teachers and educators to find new ways. So it's about sustaining those really great things that we've learned over the last number of years also in terms of education and pedagogical practice. So those are the themes that stick in my mind when I think about sustaining education.
Brilliant. Thank you, Seamus. Aoife.
Could you just check the mic? Is it turned on? Testing 1, 2. Pass, we've nothing through on this at all. Testing 1, 2.
Don't you love technology?
Yeah.
It's sort of, yeah, kind of. What I like about technology is there's always someone else to blame. You know, it's not working. That's coming through now.
Loud and clear. So that's when you're not speaking, you can just press the button. When that light is on, you have no, the mic is off. Back on there. Okay? Brilliant.
And point, it's all now at this stage, I think, Aoife, so just point away and off you go.
Not right. Is the light off?
Light is on.
No, turn it off.
Turn off.
Turn off the light.
Okay,
Turn off the light.
apologies.
Okay.
So sustaining education, I'm going to go back a bit to Pam's introduction. So what came to mind to me was kind of giving support, strength, ongoing with education. Going back to lockdown as teachers, just like that, we were teaching students and they had the computer in their bedroom, maybe they were in the kitchen, maybe their little brother or sister was in the room beside them, and sustaining education during lockdown was using technology. But now that we're back in the classroom, no two students experienced the same lockdown. So I had some students that were delighted to be back in school, and other students found it really, really difficult. It was a tough few years. So I think sustaining education is giving support and strength and coming back and working together and talking about it. And as educators, as I said, I'm a language teacher, so this is probably a little bit out of my comfort zone, but at the moment in the junior cycle, sustainability is huge, every part of the curriculum. Even in languages, the environment comes up in French, German, and Irish in the oral and in comprehensions. So as an educator, I think we need to sometimes go a little bit out of our comfort zone and learn from others. And then young people like Saoirse are making a huge impact. Just to give my own school a plug, we had the Davis College Model United Nations 2 weeks ago in Cork City Hall. It's run completely by students, so there was 400 delegates from all over Ireland and from Spain. Usually we have Portugal and England as well. Climate change was one of the issues being discussed, and again we're giving voice to young people because they're the future. So I suppose sustaining education is that we're all taking part in it. The teachers are learning, developing, we're giving a voice to the younger generation and to the outside community. Okay, thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Aoife. And why now? Why is it now that we should be talking about this?
Well, now more than ever, because as I said, back in the classroom, I have students that maybe aren't the same. They've had a difficult time. And also, I know myself in the groups that I worked with, some of the projects, for example, we had a huge effort to reduce plastic, and we put so much work into it. Then we're back into school, and we've bottles of hand sanitizer everywhere, we've masks everywhere. Our poor caretaker there was an issue with some masks being thrown into the toilets, which was, so there was we had made so much progress, and then it was a step backwards again. And I think finally things are looking up for us. We're all here today, so definitely now the time is to talk again and to try and make progress.
That's very good. Thanks, Aoife.
Okay,
Much appreciated.
good.
Can we go to Deirdre next, folks, please, and then on to Declan. Deirdre, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Connor.
Okay. So again, the challenge here, what does sustainability, at the title, what does sustainable education mean to you, and why is it good to be talking about it now?
So yeah, look, I suppose on the technology side, completely agree with the other panelists. I think, we've been through so much in the last couple of years, and I think, it's really good just to stop and reflect and think about, it was hugely challenging, like in Ireland, like across Europe and around the world, there were massive issues around connectivity, no access to devices, social, digital exclusion, but then, tremendous amounts of kind of creativity and resilience. So I think it's definitely about taking stock and, really kind of building on the good stuff that happened in that very difficult time. It's definitely brought digital education into the mainstream. I fully agree with Seamus on that. I think we have a way to go to bring sustainability into the mainstream of all parts of our education and training system. We ran a public consultation last year to prepare our new policy, and just the messages that we're getting back are, often sustainability, it's just kind of one or two teachers within a school, a small group of students kind of leading out on the environmental issues, sustainability. That isn't enough. Like, it's got to be everybody's business in education. Like, this is about really deep and profound changes in how we live and how we work. And to do that, I think we need to really embed sustainability. It's not just a topic or an add-on. It really needs to be infused across the board. So, we need to be looking at our initial teacher education. We need to be looking at continuous professional development. How are we looking at sustainability in there? What about our leadership teams? If we really need to move to a kind of whole institution approach, so there'd be a lot of parallels, I suppose, with technology use there. It can't just be about, the 1-2 members of staff. You got to have everybody on board. It's your leadership teams, it's your student engagement as well. So I think it's really good that today we're kind of having that conversation between what can be two kind of separate camps. You can have the kind of, I work on sustainability in education and I work on technology in education. And I think that's really wrong. Like, we have to kind of build bridges, I think, and I see a lot of kind of similarities and complementarities there as well. It needs to be the whole institution approach. We need to really invest in teacher professional development as well on this. In many parts of Europe, the curriculum is just overloaded, and how do we make space for sustainability in that? How do we, learn in an interdisciplinary way? How do we connect the environmental with the social and the economic? You need space and time, and that will be a feedback we'd hear from teachers all across Europe, that they, that they need space to work on these issues. They need to be able to work together as teams of teachers. So I think we still have a way to go when it comes to sustainability, and we can't be waiting out for these long-term reforms as well. This is too urgent. I think we really need to act now. We need to look at how to make space for this in the curriculum that we have right now. And just to mention, I was down in Kinsale Community School last week at an event, and they're just doing wonderful stuff. They really have sustainability and technology to the fore. Everything that they're doing in that school, it's infused everywhere. They have a sustainability lead. They call it a sustainability chaplain, who works together with the students and staff on all things sustainability and environmental issues. And they're doing great stuff, both as part of the curriculum and in extracurricular activities as well, really connecting with the local community on sustainability issues as well. So it was great to see all of that in action in Kinsale last week. But yeah, I think we've a way to go on that front, and I think it's brilliant that today we're kind of building that bridge between the ICT piece and sustainability.
Deirdre, that's brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. Our last speaker then is Declan.
Thanks, Connor.
Are we okay for sound, lads? Yep.
Testing.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay, so it's just interesting, Deirdre used the word there, I suppose, taking stock. So I think that's a good place where we're at in terms of our schools, and I suppose I'm thinking of this through the teacher on the ground, because I think sometimes, you know, these events are wonderful, but sometimes we're talking about things up here, but really we still have to go in and deliver the curriculum on the ground, you know, so that's fundamental. And then from our perspective in supporting the schools and listening to teachers and school leaders and just seeing what's happening on the ground, I think there's been a real shift over the last while. So COVID brought on the digital divide, as everyone has mentioned, and it was really evident about the students that had and didn't have access to technology, access to internet, access to devices, and how that affected their engagement during the lockdowns. And then the policy response to that was, well, let's load money and let's get infrastructure and let's get the devices in people's hands. And even before, so there's been the two ICT grants. There was a European Resilience and Recovery Fund, so money was given out to each government, who then were delivering out to the schools, but that was on infrastructure. And then the most recent ICT grant, infrastructure. So it's absolutely wonderful for Apple, Microsoft and Lenovo, etc. Yeah. So I think now it's an opportunity to take stock of, you know, if you look at the schools and the amount of devices and so on and hardware that's in the schools, and now it's how can we move from infrastructure to sustain what we now have and the investments we put in place to shift that towards people. So you talk to teachers and everyone has moved now from how do I use Microsoft Teams when it was like school closures, how do I use Teams, how do I let them in, how do I let them out, how do I get out Johnny when he's talking he shouldn't be talking. Whereas now it's about how am I using that technology for my subject area to enhance the learner experience. So as they talk about the teacher professional, like the TPAC as they call it, right? So how can I in my subject use that technology so that the students when they walk in the door that they're going to learn all about how that technology can really progress their learning in their subject area and how technology enhances it. So if I rewind back, where do I think we need to sustain what we do? Move from infrastructure to people. And teachers learn best talking to teachers. So the Digital Learning Framework, there was the review of the Digital Learning Framework was published last year, and in it the most teachers reported that their best professional learning they get is the informal conversations they have with their teachers. So that's one. The second thing then I would say is that we need to have greater support, greater collaboration within schools and without schools. Within schools and with other schools in your area. So for example, you were driving in through Thurles here, there was communion, the traffic was mental. So I was coming in, I was parked, and you drive past the Ursuline, you drive past the CBS, you drive past Coláiste Mhuire, like all within 10-minute walking distance here as you walk in. And like the teachers within those schools can come together in a network to enhance everything, because what's happening in Coláiste Mhuire can work in the Ursuline and so on and so forth, right? Now I know everyone's competing for students and it's a bit utopian, but we can all learn from each other in close proximity. It doesn't all have to be going to PDST events that we pick this stuff up. And then additionally to that then I would say about the student voice, that there's sort of tacit acknowledgement of student voice, and we put up posters around our schools about student voice. Isn't it great? We form a student council, they have 3 meetings a year, they change the colour of the t-shirt. Oh, we have a brilliant student council in our school. But do we actually listen to our students, or is it just tacit acknowledgement, you know? And I suppose it's just wonderful, you know, I've never met Saoirse before in my life, and you hear her, she talks for 10 seconds and you can see the competence that she has, and they exist in all of our schools. So it's to give those students an opportunity to really to influence how the policy and that we develop at school level. And then just to say very finally on this, we have we're very lucky in the ETB. We're a ready-made network. So our 9 schools, we have different communities of practice set up, and one of them is a digital technology community of practice. And we focus this year on using the selfie tool, so that each school is using the selfie tool to develop a digital learning plan. And I just said I'd chance it, and Deirdre's colleagues in the Joint Research Centre, I said I'm going to chance getting onto these now and see, look, we're doing this project. And then Connor was really helpful in getting conversations. So we ended up having a meeting with members of the Joint Research Centre, and we were saying about this project that we're doing with UCD, that we're all doing the selfie tool, we're looking at the results together, we're planning what we can do and how we can support each other and implement the plan. And then Anastasia, one of the ladies there, she said, okay, now you need to go back to the students who completed the survey and form a team with your students so that they inform the digital learning plan. So anyone here is a secondary school teacher, you develop the digital learning plan, and like just she said, I'm like, you know, it's a no-brainer. Like, you know, why are we not going back to the people who complete the survey to influence the plan? But what we do is we get the data, we go into a meeting with 4 other teachers, and we draw up the plan. You know, and that's the plan.
Don't be giving away our secrets, Declan. Listen, you've taken us into. Don't turn it off. Leave it on. You've taken us into an interesting space there, because there are sort of 3 sort of general kind of questions that I'd like to kind of put to the full panel. And the first of those you've already kind of started unpacking a little bit for us. It's the question of where do people fit in all of these readings? We've had some slightly different readings, but where do people fit in relation to all of this? Now, you've kind of taken us into that space. You said, you know, you can do networking, essentially the people talk together, teachers talk together, students talk together. Any other thoughts, folks, including you, Deirdre, obviously, in terms of question 1, if you like, where do people fit in our vision? So just feel free to chip in and wrestle the mic from this man if when you need it. Who'll take us out on that? Yes, Aoife, thank you. It should be turned on.
It's on, yeah. Yep. It's on. Yeah, so again, going back, I think we've all touched on it. People like Saoirse, I've spoken about the Davis College Model United Nations. I think as teachers, a lot of the time, we maybe spoon feed our students, or we don't realise what they're capable. So talking about people, I think we have to give more empowerment to our students to run events, and I mean, what you've accomplished is absolutely amazing. So I think sometimes as teachers, we meet up and we discuss, but we don't always give enough voice to students. I think we've all kind of touched on that. And my school is a DESH school, so there's lots of working class families. But when you see the students involved with the projects we've done, the Young Reducers, A Sustainable Life with My Canine Friend, the work they've done, they've volunteered at shelters, they keep coming back to me. The final is next week, but they keep coming back and they say, Miss, can we have another meeting? Is there something extra we can do? So, I mean, students themselves have so many ideas. And sometimes when I want to get something done, if my principal is under a little bit of pressure, instead of going to him, I know the students will go to him, and they speak so well, they get their message across. And it's much easier to say no to a group of students than to a teacher. So again, we've all mentioned it, but 100% we need to give maybe more voice to our students, more empowerment.
Yeah, that's very good. Deirdre, feel free to jump in. Again, it's very difficult. I'm sort of looking over my shoulder at the big screen, but I know you're here kind of in spirit.
Sure.
Feel free to jump in if you need to on this one.
Just to say a few words on the people side. When we were building the selfie tool, I mean, it started off really as a small pilot project about 4 years ago when we started the build. And I think for us it was really important to get the student voice in there. That's one thing we really wanted to do, because of course students like Saoirse, of course, they have strong views on how technology is being used and on their own digital skills development and what they need. So that was something that we built into this tool from the start. And it's really taken off. We ran a pilot across Europe. That was 3 years ago we launched, and we've actually just recently, I was looking at the figures, we've had 3 million users of the selfie tool in 80 countries around the world. So I think it really shows that there's a need for that kind of planning that Declan was talking about there. And it's all about the context. It's all about what does the technology mean for me in my school, in my context, and that will look totally different depending on the school. So I think with Selfie, we really wanted to have a conversation starter. So it was never really about the technology. We weren't pushing any technology agenda. It was about the conversation starter on the why of the technology use. I think Hassan is running a panel. I saw that a workshop later. If technology is the answer, then what's the question? I think that's a really nice way of putting it. So Selfie has always been about the people, the conversation, and the why of technology use. And then recently we launched a new tool, Selfie for Teachers. We launched that just at the end of last year. We rolled it out in all EU languages. And that's for the teachers to really reflect on their own digital skills, on what's going well, on where the gaps are. And we built a feature into that tool that teams of teachers can work together as well. Like that goes back to teachers learning best from other teachers. So you can work as a team of teachers on the tool and you get a feedback report with some tips on leveling up. So those the two tools that really started off small scale, I think they've really grown, and I think they're kind of meeting a need to put the people into the technology piece.
Yeah, I think that's very useful. For those of you, by the way, who might not be familiar with Selfie, it's a reflective tool that's used at the school level to help the school get a sense of where it is in terms of its strengths for using technology, and where they might want to put a little bit more focus, time, and attention. And then the extension tools, and there's a brace of them coming, but the first of the extension tools is what Deirdre's just referred to as Selfie for Teachers. And that kind of brings it down to the people level in a way. It brings it straight to individual teachers, but it can be used in groups. So one of the thoughts that occurred to me is something like teaching sustainability or teaching around the idea of sustainability in schools. If you've got a group of teachers together, they could use something like Selfie for Teachers to support each other, to bootstrap each other, and so on. But that's perhaps a conversation for another day. Any further thoughts, folks, on people in all of this? Seamus, and then maybe...
Yeah, if I might just comment. As I mentioned, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've worked in the energy space. But really for the last 10 years, the research I've done and the narrative that I've spoken about is that the technology, I'm not worried about the technology. There's loads of really smart people out there designing really cool technology in the energy space and in the IT space.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of people who say, well, technology will solve climate change. I absolutely don't agree with that. But the technology will be there. Like what I've been speaking about for the last 10 years in the energy space in particular has been people and money. And in the people space, I suppose the three words that I talk about are opportunity, responsibility, and leadership. And I suppose the first word is around opportunity. So it's to give people, whether they're students or educators or the community, the opportunity to engage in the sustainability agenda, because young people like Saoirse and the thousands of people that have been engaged in Fridays for the Future, like they wanted the opportunity to voice their opinions. They created their own space to voice their opinions because we hadn't given them the opportunity to engage in the activity and the debate. So we need to give the learners the opportunity to engage, and it can be very simple things like what we've spoken about across the schools. So that's the first word. The second is responsibility. Like we all individually have responsibility to address the sustainability agenda. Whatever small piece that we do, so we can be a complete greenie like me, or we can just do our small piece. But I suppose we then as educators need to, support people to take responsibility and to engage with people to talk about the responsibility to address sustainability. And the last piece is leadership. So I've leading a new kind of research project around climate leadership. And because at many different levels, leaders, and so I sit at management meetings in here. Most of my day is at the management meetings, not down with the people and the students. And most of the leaders in our organizations don't have the tools to address, or the knowledge to address the challenges that are coming in terms of sustainability and integration with all of the other things that they've been asked to do, whether it's on technology or access or equality. They don't have this, so we're trying to develop climate leadership training for people at the leadership level. Yeah, great. Because it has to come from the students and it has to come from the top.
Has to meet somewhere in the middle.
Hopefully we get Nirvana in the middle.
Okay? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the biggest thing, obviously the panelists have been talking about student voice, and I have a background in student voice. And I think student voice, again, has a lot of power that is just not really tapped into. In my personal experience, you know, schools, they're not tailored around students in any way, shape or form. You know, I think that hopefully is beginning to change, but, you know, often the curriculum, the hours, the classrooms, they're all built around the staff, if you know what I mean. And that can be really difficult as a student because you feel as if your voice and your identity have no purpose in a school environment.
Wow.
You know, and this is a big thing for me. Like I care a lot about equality, especially in schools, because I'm a quality officer of the Irish Second Level Students' Union. And you know, it's really frustrating when you go into a school environment to see just the wide variety of just not caring about student voice or students really in any way, shape or form. And I think it can compromise things like our mental health very much as well. We already have so much of increasing pressure on us with the education system and how jam-packed the curriculum is. But on top of that, we also have you know, we do live, because of technology, we do live in a world where we are constantly faced with these crises, and it can be really difficult as a young person to kind of switch your mind off when you go into the school environment, and unfortunately that's what you have to do, because it's like a separate world. You know, you're really disconnected from reality, I feel, when I'm in the school environment, because you know, one of the big things of the climate movement was, what's the point of studying for a future we might not have? So I think student voice is very, very important in this, and I think student voice, if it is carried out properly and democratically, will be a catalyst for systemic change. As well as that, I think in terms of individuals' responsibility, one of the biggest and most important things that we can do in terms of sustainability as an individual is vote for people who will change the legislation. We do all have an individual responsibility, but the fact of the matter is the individual our carbon footprint, for instance, which was a term created by a fossil fuel company in order to place the blame back on individuals. You know, we have a responsibility to change that, but our carbon footprint in relation to the amount of carbon and methane that's put out by harmful industrial farming practices or massive corporations that have no regard for human life, you know, it's so much more. And the only way we can actually change our current situation is by having people in power and legislators who are willing to actually put people's lives and their voices before profit. Yeah, and I think I genuinely think that technology and sustainability and student voice and all of these issues, they all come into play here, because I think if we continue to kind of I can't remember who was saying it, but if we continue to kind of separate out each of these things and, you know, have sustainability as something to implement and technology as something separate to implement, that will cause an issue, because the fact, like, to me, in terms of technology, I think technology also, as well as education, has this immense potential to really change the world. And I think that if we treat it as something that's entirely separate to something like sustainability, like, we're not really going to get anywhere. And I think in everything in the school environment, student voice should be the absolute center of how schools operate. So, yeah.
Good stuff, and a challenge to all of us. Folks, I'm aware of the time, so I'm actually going to turn the questions over to the floor at this stage. Is there anyone who would like to address a question to a particular panel member, to the panel generally, that you'd like to put out for us? Please feel free to just raise your hand, and we can take it from there. Any takers? Free coffee. You qualified for the free coffee. Okay. So just just say who you are and then fire your question, and we're good. Thank you. It's on. Yep.
Yeah. So my name is Sandrine McKinney.
Lights off, sound on, I think is what he said, Chris. Yeah.
My name is Sandrine McKinney. I'm
an education officer with Post-Primary Languages Ireland, and one of the responsibilities I have is digital technology for language teachers. I find this discussion amazing, and it's questioning a lot of things that we're doing in schools, and I think everybody at a point that at some stage we actually need to look at schools, at the way we're operating schools, and we need a change. But somebody has to do that change. And you mentioned the question of leadership from the top and from the students. We're hearing a lot about the student voice in schools, and as Saoirse mentioned, it's done more or less well, depending on the schools, you know, how much they believe in it. I'm just thinking that when we're talking about leadership in schools, a lot of the time we give an AP post to somebody, and that person becomes the person. So they became the well-being coordinator. And then the responsibility kind of, nobody gets involved then, because it was like, well, they're getting paid for that post.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think the leadership courses, or, you know, whatever you're going to put in place, thinking of, it's going to have to be different. Because if we want everybody to be involved, we can't have that one person and it's on their shoulder. They have, you know, I know some people will calculate it, have so many hours a year to dedicate to that project. And it doesn't work. I think, you know, I've been in many schools, and the projects that actually have worked best are the ones that were taken by the whole staff, the whole school community, caretakers, you know, everybody that's there, and then that developed into a change in school.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
So
I mean, that's very like the approach that actually Aoife's school is inclined to take. I think if that's a fair comment, Aoife, yeah?
I think we've worked together on a few projects, like the apologies,
Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
the home ec teacher, when we were trying to reduce plastic. We had a sustainable bake sale where we tried to use no palm oil or plastic. So I've linked up with a few teachers, but I do agree overall though, like it's not my post. I got interested in this because I saw what my daughter was doing in primary school and that they were very, very active. And then I feel like we have an amazing school, but I felt as far as sustainability and the environment that we needed to do more.
Yeah.
So I have been fortunate that I have had teachers to help me and to link up, because you need that support. But I would still say that there could be more people in the school community involved.
Fair enough, good point. Any other questions, folks, from the audience? Yes, do please, yes, Declan. Anyone else, just raise your hand if you have a question and we'll get a mic to you.
Great point you were making there, and just I had written down, but I was talking too much, so I had to stop earlier. So I was thinking about culture and how we shift culture in the school, and you know, positions AP1s and AP2s are potentially a blocker to culture shift. So and I suppose again, I'm just thinking reality on the ground here. There is a review of posts in the school. Next week there's an AP1 interview, 10 people go for it, one person gets it, 9 people aren't happy, okay?
Yeah.
One person gets it, they're now the digital technology coordinator, they go and form a team, that's their job, okay? So there are potential blockers here, so I would say it's a real challenge, like, you know, but it is, like, how do you shift culture in such a competitive space? So again, you think now if you're a principal or deputy principal and you've got, like, these are the words that are on their desk: sustainability, inclusion, digital technologies, well-being. So all of these spaces, but yet we were talking at the very, very start about, but it's all about education. These are all facets of education, but these are actually just things that we're all trying to fit in with a plan and a policy. So like, you think about, let's start talking.
No, you're good, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So, so what happens is, something happens, there's an agenda that's been pushed from political level, let's give money to the schools, let's form a team, let's spend money on it. Freedom of information request goes back up to the minister, we spent this much money on it, job done. Okay? Yeah. I'll stop.
You'll start. Anyone else want to come in on that, or there's one more raised hand. I will go. I'm leaving the building like Elvis. There you go. And introduce yourself, sir, and tell us what your question is. We all know who you are anyway, but go on.
I'm Neil Butler. I'm a PTSD advisor for computer science.
Thanks,
and
Neil.
I'm thinking aloud rather than actually having a question. So hopefully
that's okay. That's
can,
allowed.
Can be formed. Before the pandemic, I suppose education was we do whatever we can to, and put whatever we can to students to get them learning and thinking and growing. But as now that everything is so embedded with technology, I think should an acknowledgement be made about the amount of data that we're saving around schools and technology we're using, and somewhere on some web server is all the school stuff whirring away, burning oil, creating carbon emissions to do the technology and education stuff, and all the e-waste being created by all the devices everyone has now. And I think, should we be doing something to mitigate that, or is education too important to? Is that not our responsibility, because our children need to be educated, need to be brought into the world, to help them take their place and take over and hopefully make it better, do a better job than we're doing. But is the amount of stuff being created and destroyed and in the name of education something that we need to care about at the moment, or do we just acknowledge that it's a necessary evil?
That's an intriguing question. Yeah, thank you. And again, my own kind of gut reaction to that would be that if you look at the young people, we don't have enough young people in the room, by the way. But we have three really interesting young characters here, and I know that some of you at least will know the story behind the youth media team, and the fact that if you're stopped by one of these young people in a red T-shirt and they ask you questions, you have to answer. That's it. That's part of the conditions of being at the conference here. And then, as I say, we have Saoirse, who's raised some, I think, really, really important questions in relation to the challenges that face us. Primary teachers in the room, you'll recognise immediately what I'm going to do. Star and a wish, that sort of thing, right? I'm going to give the panel 1 star, 1 wish each, 30 seconds. What's your star? What have you taken away from the conversation so far?
Oh, okay.
And what would you really like, if you were the minister for changing everything, what would you change tomorrow? 30 seconds, and I'm going to stop you after 30. And I'm going to stop you after 30.
I'm not sure. Oh my God, this is a lot of pressure. I think it's really awesome to see teachers talking about student voice, because often it feels like teachers don't care about student voice.
Yeah.
And I think if I was Minister for Changing Everything, I would encourage more collaboration in every single field, but especially in the government, because I think, what you were saying, I think we do need to care about the environmental sorry, this is more than 30 seconds. I think we do need to care about the environmental impact of technology, but also the issue resides with legislators. So we need to approach things from a more, I suppose, unified way of thinking. Okay. So rather than thinking, like Deirdre was saying, disconnecting everything, you have sustainability, you have technology, this is something, or in the government you have the Minister for Health, the Minister for Quality, the Minister for Education, and none of them work together. They're all like, oh, that's the other department.
Yeah, we need a Minister for everything.
Well, yeah, and so I think it's just really important that, I don't know if that really answers.
That does, it does. Saoirse, thank you very much indeed. Seamus, and 30, I'm going to be really strict now on your 30 seconds.
My star and my wish are the same thing, and it's interdisciplinarity. I think Deirdre mentioned it's come across this interdisciplinarity approach that, I think it's critical to our society going forward that we have, and my wish is that people will embrace interdisciplinarity.
Thank you, Seamus.
Because people see it as this horrible space where I have to talk to these economists and these business people and sociologists, and it's actually an amazing space when you work in an interdisciplinary way. So absolutely. That's my wish.
Very much appreciated. Deirdre, can we go across to you next, please? Your star and your wish, please.
Sure, Conor. So I was really struck by what Saoirse said about feeling that school wasn't relevant, and that there was kind of a mindset shift when you're in school. That's just wrong. I think sustainability, like technologies, there's an opportunity there to make learning more relevant and more engaging and more hands-on. So I think we should also be talking about the opportunity of sustainability for education. It's a great way to, work collaboratively on topics that are of absolute relevance. So yeah, my wish would be to see sustainability not dealt with like another thing, but really kind of properly embedded. And I'd love to see more conversations between the digital and the sustainable. There's a lot that we've got to discuss there.
Brilliant, thank you, Deirdre. And again, I think that, in fairness, the work that you guys are doing is going to help greatly with that in terms of getting those conversations started and keeping them going over time. Aoife, 35 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
Cork seconds now.
Cork
okay.
seconds. Right. My star, really, I suppose, is that a lot of us here are on the same page, that we are all for discussion, student voice, educators, that we're all meeting up, getting the information out. To go back to the lawnmower, Declan brought up the lawnmower. I'm struggling with buying a lawnmower at the moment. I've parts of my garden wild because it's no mowing for me.
No mowing for me.
But
yeah.
I have a daughter that loves to play soccer, and I also need to try and pick up after my dogs. So even stuff like that, more information out there. I'm trying to get an electrical battery, and everyone's telling me, no, you need petrol. So I think to keep up the discussion and to go back to the wish, we mentioned posts. I think having a sustainability post in school would be great, and not to just have it political. I think we need to work on that side of things as well.
That's brilliant. Declan, you can have 10 seconds. Go on.
Thanks, Connor. Okay, so I think just at the start, just things I've kind of learned, and I think if you really just think of it simply from a teach-learn perspective, effective use of technology in the classroom, and if students have access to it, can reduce waste. Like at a very simple level, you know. So if you're using the technology to administer and to give out work back over, if everyone has access to it, that's reducing paper, it's reducing photocopying. You know, it's a very simple. The e-waste is a really it's a really interesting point just to bring up there. Is it a necessary evil? I thought that was just something really to take away and think about. But you know, technology can move us forward. It's just about how we're planning to use it, I think. So that's, and then I think about the wish. I think we now need to shift the expenditure away from infrastructure to people, and because it's people that change culture. Yeah. So and innovative ways in using, I say using, but supporting people to shift the culture, I think is where we need to go.
Brilliant, thank you. And you could have had a few extra seconds. I would have let you away with it, but you did well. Folks, I'm going to take my star, my wish, before we break. And my star is a very simple one. I think my star really is what's been said here today, the variety of voices, the variety of kind of positions we're hearing, but the variety of challenges that are in there as well. Really super stuff. My wish is that more of these conversations happen over time, that we have more opportunities, now that we're sort of almost back in something like a real world. So today is a small conference. It'll be, you know, we'll be talking to 6, 10 maybe people, talking among ourselves almost. But I think my wish really is that we have more of these and more opportunities for these. And Pam, I know we've run over, but thank you for your patience. Okay, and thanks to the panel for their time. Deirdre, Declan, Aoife, Seamus and Saoirse, not least Saoirse because you're furthest from me. But thank you again, and thanks for the questions, folks. Have a good day.
So just to round things off for the keynote session of this morning, I suppose when we started this, it was, are we going back in person? Yes, we are. What are we doing on the theme? And I was nervous, which is why I went with sustaining education rather than, but actually, sustainability and technology now from here on in is what ICT in education is about, what our conference is about. You stole, and I knew you would, Connor, but you stole my star and my wish. The star, which is what this conference has always been about, is the diversity of voices in the room. And Eva, you mentioned as well just about, I suppose there's a couple of things that struck me in the keynote. You mentioned about bringing something into your class because you saw it from your daughter's primary school. We need more of those conversations, and that's what this conference has always been about, primary, secondary and third level. My kids are in third level now. They've gone through primary, they've gone through secondary. They didn't suddenly change from going from primary school into secondary school. They didn't change the summer that they went from secondary school into third level. So we need to, and yet everything changed for them over that summer. So they finished in May or June, and then they went in September to something completely new. We need to be talking. We need the sustainability issue to be talked about because it's what we're about. There isn't a, so I suppose for me, keynote is always about what are you thinking about for the rest of the day? For me, this is going to be what am I thinking about for the rest of the year? So I think we just need to talk. We need to do a little bit more of it. Yeah. So thank you. So
just before we go, Pam, Deirdre, I hope I didn't miss you on the thanks there when I was going along the panel. I have an awful feeling I did. So thank you for beaming in.
No, you didn't, Connor. Okay, no worries at all. It was great to be here.
Horrible
Wish I could join you now for the coffee and the chat.
Okay, great stuff.
Deirdre, I'll get you back some year. One of these years. 2 years ago you were going to be here and it didn't happen. This year you're beaming in. Soon you'll be here in person, hopefully. Can I just say thank you to everyone, just for your perspective, for your honesty, and just for coming today and for being here. And, you know, just to give us something to think about, and that's what keynotes are all about. Just for the rest of the day, so we're into coffee now. We've made space, as I said, for talking. There's a Wrong Bianca section, so if you go grab yourself a coffee and just walk up the corridor, there are some student showcases up there. Again, it's more about the chat. It's about, where do we go from here? At 10 to 12, I am going to be a little bit strict on this one. At 10 to 12, we're going to kick off our breakout sessions. There are 2 before lunch, so there's 2 35-minute sessions. To get to the rooms, up to the canteen, hang a left, first 3 labs down along there. That's where everything is. So you're literally just going from one room to the next, okay? So there's 2 sessions before lunch. We have a break for lunch, and then we have 2 sessions after lunch, and we're back for a capstone. So grab a coffee, talk. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Pam.
Yeah. Yeah, so just for those of you watching online, we will be streaming the capstone, and we'll put out that link in a little while. For anyone who is watching, who is here, please tweet out with #ICTEDU and just get the word out there. Thank you very much.
Bye. No, I think we can.